Okay, antitrust, and we're going to start with some economic theory about monopoly. Okay, hopefully by this point we're all more or less in agreement with Adam Smith that competition is a good thing, that we're better off when we have choice and competition. Our question of the moment is, does that mean it's bad if we don't? All right, so what do we get with competition? Let's remind ourselves. Let's go back to Adam Smith, our buddy Adam Smith. Competition. Look at all the hotels there on Waikiki. If you're going to Hawaii and you're going to stay on Oahu, which I don't understand why you would stay on Oahu, but if you're going to Hawaii and you're not going to a good island and you decide you're going to stay on Waikiki, there are a lot of choices there. There is some competition. The first thing that competition should do for us is lower prices. And if you think that prices on Waikiki are high, which they are, imagine what they would be if there was only one hotel there. When businesses are fighting for your business, that competition, the invisible hand, encourages them to have low prices or to keep their prices at least reasonable. At the same time, it encourages them to give you high quality products and high quality service. If you go to a restaurant and the prices are high, the food's bad, and the service is terrible, you're not going back. You go back to restaurants where your prices, you like the prices are decent, food's good, service is great. That's where you go eat. Competition is what does that for you. In addition to that, competition creates innovation. It gives us a reason to do things differently, to come up with a new way to do things because I want to attract customers. This is all related to, or not all related, but a lot of this is related to something we call product differentiation, which is something that has both a good side for us and a bad side for us. So the good side for product differentiation, and product differentiation is this idea that we as a business will make our product unique. We're going to try to make our product markedly different than the other people. We want to stand out from the crowd. Product differentiation. You see people walking around campus and they've got a weird outfit on, or they're, trying to show you that they play guitar or something. They're trying to create product differentiation, trying to get people interested in them. Well, they don't want to be just like everybody else. Okay? So, again, if we look at cheap fast food, you think we got Taco Bell, we have Del Taco, we have Cafe Rio, we have Chipotle. And if I sit down with you and ask you if you've been to all those places, if I sit down and ask you what's unique about them, you have an idea, right? Taco Bell, their market is teenage boys and 20-something men. That's their market. Everything they do is geared to selling to, 14 to 29-year-old males. Cafe Rio, make the tortillas in there while you're eating. They got kind of a homey, woody kind of atmosphere. Chipotle is all about it's organic, it's GMO free, we cook everything here, we buy locally when we can, we make all this really good stuff. So everything is unique, and that's good for consumers. Gives us choice. Now the bad side of this for consumers is if we're too good at product differentiation. It's fine that we know Southwest Airlines and United Airlines give us a different product, and we get to choose between them depending on what we're doing and where we're going. But some people and sometimes some products, the product differentiation becomes so strong that it's as if they're a monopoly. And if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you know that people will say, I want a Coke, and you say to them, we only have Pepsi, and they'll go, no, I can't drink that stuff. Or the other way around, they're either Coke people or Pepsi people. Well, as soon as you don't drink any other soft drink but Pepsi or Coke, one or the other, not both. As soon as you're a Coke person or a Pepsi person, they got you. And the price can be really high because they got you. Okay? So product differentiation has a good side in that it can create interesting and exciting choices for us. It can have a bad side in that we can get stuck on something and then we start paying more for it because we only eat Skippy and they know we only eat Skippy, and therefore they can raise the price of Skippy. Okay, so terminology, to make sure we understand some terminology here. Mono means one. Monopoly means we have one seller of the product. If you want to buy electricity in Las Vegas, you buy it from NV Energy. You can put up a windmill, you can put solar on your house, and even then, interestingly enough, as we'll talk about later when we get to Nevada, you still have to pay NV Energy. But they're your only choice. You have one choice. You have Southwest Gas, you have NV Energy, you have Republic Services to pick up your trash. Those are monopolies. Close to a monopoly is something that we call an oligopoly. Oligopoly means we have a few businesses. We have a small number, at least two, and we don't know what the high end is, but we notice certain businesses are what we call interdependent, that certain businesses react to each other. If you look at a small restaurant over on the east side of town and a small restaurant over on the west side of town, they don't care what the other one's doing. They don't care what the prices are. They're not really in competition with each other. Right? They're 40 miles apart. Nobody cares. When one airline lowers their fares to Hawaii, it's going to make the other airlines respond. When one hotel in Las Vegas offers really cheap rates for the weekend, other hotels are going to have to respond. If McDonald's offers really cheap hamburgers, the other cheap, bad hamburger places are going to have to respond. Those are oligopolies because they have to respond to each other. They're interdependent. What do monopolies do? What are their behaviors? And again, oligopolies can frequently do these behaviors because of what they do, and we'll talk about that as we get into the laws and kind of things about what you can do and not do. And even sometimes small businesses can do them because they've used product differentiation to make you think their product is different than the other guys. The very basic monopoly behavior is to restrict output. If I make something and nobody else makes it, and I know that 10,000 people want to buy it, the best thing I can do is to only make 9,000 of them. If I make fewer of my product than consumers want, they're going to fight over it. And as soon as they're fighting over it, I can start raising the price. So we restrict output, and we'll give you some examples here in a minute. We restrict output to raise the price. Number two, something called price discrimination, which means we charge different prices to different people. Number three, something called predatory pricing. And predatory pricing means that we price really low, not forever, but for a short period of time, to either get rid of a competitor or to prevent a competitor. I charge a really low price. I know Southwest wants to fly to Hawaii. I charge a really low price on my airfare to Hawaii to discourage Southwest from going in. That's a predatory price. And a tying contract, Xerox for a while was the only company that made copy machines. The only one. Not the only company that sold paper. There were lots of paper companies out there, but the only company that made copiers. So to exploit the power of their monopoly, Xerox required that if you owned a Xerox copy machine, you had to buy your paper and your toner from Xerox. You had to get your repairs done by Xerox. Those are tying contracts. If you own product A, you have to do B, C, and D. Those are what we call tying contracts. They're things only monopolies can get away with. Restrict output. So you may have heard of this company called Enron. You may know something about it. They did all sorts of bad things, and we're just going to talk about one of them. Enron is an energy company. Enron, energy. At any given time in the United States, on average, about 3% of the electrical power plants, electrical power capacity of the United States is offline for maintenance. And if you know anything about power in the United States, and I mean electrical power, not power, there's what's called a grid. And utilities generate their own power, but they can buy extra power if they need it, and they can sell their extra power if they have any. So we share power. That way everybody, NV Energy in Las Vegas does not have to generate enough electricity for the peak summertime in Las Vegas and then have that sit around and not be able to use it all winter because nobody needs it. NV Energy builds almost enough power to cover their extreme needs, but on those few days that they really have high power demand, they expect to be able to buy power from somewhere else in the country where they're not using it right now. What Enron did was they arranged, and again, it's not exactly legal, but they arranged for some extra power plants to be shut down. And they arranged in this summer for about 10% for a while, for about 10% of the power generation in the United States to be down for maintenance. What happens then is electrical utilities, they look at their power grid, they've got all those screens there, and they're checking their power grid, and they realize they need to buy some electricity from somewhere else. Summertime, it's hot, and they can't find it. Or they can find it, but it's really expensive. So Enron is hoarding the electric power, the extra power in the country, and they're selling it at very high prices. And power utilities get to pass that on to their consumers. Well, the summer that they did this, the average power bill in San Diego more than doubled. And Enron made a lot of money, okay, by restricting output, which allowed prices to rise. So another example, a more common, example is this company called De Beers. They're a South African company. They're mean, evil, racist South Africans. If you study their history, it's not really a very nice history. But anyway, diamonds always show up because diamonds have to be created where it's very hot, under a lot of pressure. The only place we find diamonds is in very deep extinct volcanoes, because diamonds are created way down in the center of the earth. And so all natural diamonds are pulled up to the surface in volcanoes. They have to be very deep volcanoes, and they have to be extinct, because if there's still lava in them, we're really not going to go look for diamonds there. So extinct old deep volcanoes don't appear very frequently on the planet Earth. So the southern part of Africa, there's tons of them. And then in Russia, for example, there's tons of them. There's very few places on Earth where they exist. And De Beers either owns them directly all over southern Africa, or they have agreements like with Russia that they will sell the diamonds for them. So De Beers owns almost all the diamond production in the world, or controls it. It turns out that diamonds, relative to other gemstones, are common, and they should be fairly low priced. But in fact, they're high priced. And why are they high priced? Because De Beers grabs a hold of that market and squeezes it. And by squeezing that market, they limit the number of diamonds that get out into the world. They sell a lot of industrial diamonds. They sell them cheap diamonds that aren't good enough to be gems. But gem quality diamonds, they strangle that output. By doing so, the diamond exchanges, and there's one that's an Israeli diamond exchange there on the right. The big diamond exchanges have to take what they get, because De Beers is restricting the output of diamonds. The price of diamonds is going to be really high. Their modern problem, of course, is that we know how to make diamonds by hand now. Human beings can make them. We have diamond making machines. And so De Beers is actively involved again in product differentiation. They run ads now about how a natural diamond is better if you're buying your sweetheart a diamond, and you shouldn't buy your sweetheart a diamond because there's wars and violence and people die every year over these diamond mines in Africa and fighting in the civil wars and the so you should man-made diamond would be okay, but anyway. If you're gonna they're trying to convince you that your sweetie deserves a natural diamond as opposed to a man-made diamond, even though nobody can tell the difference. So now related to all this is this idea of what we call price discrimination. Price discrimination is charging different prices to different people. We have three variations of it, what we call first, second, and third degree. First degree is when we charge different prices to different individuals. If you've ever gone and bought a car, most likely you had to negotiate with the dealer. That's first degree price discrimination. Everybody who walks in there can potentially get a different price. Second degree price discrimination is price discrimination by quantity. So if you've got a punch card, you eat 10 sandwiches at the sandwich shop and you get a free one, that's price discrimination, second degree price discrimination. If you fly on an airline and you get points, and after you fly so many miles, you get a free flight, second degree price discrimination. A discount based on the quantity of something. If you go buy paper at the Office Depot, it might be $6 for one ream, but $55 for 10. Quantity discount, second degree price discrimination. Third degree price discrimination is by market. If a restaurant gives a student discount, Chipotle across the street from UNLV used to give free small drinks to students. That's third degree price discrimination. That's discrimination by market. Senior discounts are third degree price discrimination. If you go buy medicine in Mexico and Canada is much cheaper for exactly the same medicine from the same factory than it is in the United States. So people who live on the northern border or on the southern border go across those borders to buy their medicine instead of buying them in the United States unless their insurance company is paying for them. So lots of people in San Diego or in Tijuana all the time buying medicines because it's cheaper. Third degree price discrimination. It's too far to go from Vegas to buy a pill. You go to the grocery store, you pay whatever the price is. San Diego, Seattle, you can go across the border and get cheaper drugs. Economists believe that monopoly makes us worse off as a society. It might not make you worse off as an individual. It might not certainly doesn't make the monopoly better off or worse off. The monopoly is better off because it's a monopoly. It takes advantage of its monopoly power to make itself better off. I'm going to tell you this story here. There are economists who will tell you that this story is not right, that there's always the possibility of competition and monopolies. The power of monopolies is overrated. I'm not one of those economists that believes that. If the government for the state of Nevada did not set NV Energy's price, the price of electricity in Vegas would be very high in the summer. And we know that, in fact, they used to do things like cut off power for old people who couldn't pay their bills in the summer, were on a fixed income. And people died. The state passed rules, and we'll talk about this as we get there. The state passed rules and forced NV Energy to change how it did business. Okay, so there is a concept in economics called consumer surplus, and it's an important concept to understand. We actually use this in the real world to try to estimate things. When your cell phone provider comes up with a new plan to change cell phone rates, they have to get the government to approve that, and we'll talk about all that stuff here in a minute. They actually use consumer surplus, the government does, to decide whether or not that cell phone plan's a good idea. And consumer surplus is really simple. If I go to the grocery store and I'm going to buy a jar of peanut butter, I know how much I'd be willing to pay for that jar of peanut butter. So maybe I'm willing to pay $5 for it. And I get there and it's $4.50. Well, hey, that's the same as if I had just made 50 cents. Because I walked in there with $5, would have happily handed them the $5. The jar of peanut butter is worth $5 to me, and yet I'm going to walk out of the grocery store with a jar of peanut butter that I value at $5, and I got 50 cents. So I walked in with $5, I'm walking out with $5.50 in value. Okay? If I would pay $6 for a sandwich at the sandwich shop, and it's only $5, I walk in with $6. I'm walking out with a sandwich that I value at $6, plus I'm walking out with $1. I'm $1 ahead. That extra that we get when we get to buy things cheaper than we would have paid for them, that value that we create is called consumer surplus. Now, what monopolies do is raise prices, right? They create higher prices and lower output. That means two things. That means the consumers who are buying the product pay higher prices, and those consumers therefore get less consumer surplus. Listen to me carefully. The monopoly steals some of their consumer surplus, forces them to pay that out in cash. So if I was paying $4.50 for that jar of peanut butter and my maximum is $5, and a monopoly comes along and becomes the Monopoly Peanut Butter Company, and they raise the price to $4.75, I've just lost 25 cents in consumer surplus, which is now money in the monopoly's pocket. Okay? If they raise the price to $5.25, I'm not buying peanut butter anymore. Now I have lost that entire consumer surplus, and I've lost peanut butter. Okay? So the higher prices and the restricted output that come from monopolies cause a welfare loss. They make consumers worse off. Some consumers worse off because they're paying a higher price, and some consumers worse off because they're not buying this thing anymore. So monopolies cause a welfare loss. So the monopoly gains X dollars from us. The consumers have a loss of surplus, which is bigger than what the monopoly gets. If the consumers lost $10 and the monopoly got $10, then it's hard to say society is worse off because the monopoly is going to give that $10 to somebody, and all we're doing is moving money around. But what happens is, what we believe happens is, most of the time, is that the monopoly, to force consumers to give it more, causes some consumers to lose, to drop out of the market, to pay higher prices. The loss to consumers is bigger than the gain to the monopoly. And we call that difference a dead weight loss. It's a loss that we can't recover. It's dead weight.